back, guys, to the ABNF podcast. Happy holidays. Nick, it is great to see you, bro. Right before Christmas, too, that we get to have a special ABNF podcast for our listeners. Nick, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Just like you said, it's the holidays. It's the best time of the year to spend some time with your family and loved ones. So it's great to have another podcast right before obviously Christmas Eve, Christmas, and all of that. So definitely looking forward to diving deep into it for sure.
No, 100%, man. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we last talked. There's
Hmm.
been a lot that's been going on in the NBA, especially with the NBA Cup being over, the Milwaukee Bucks winning the second ever NBA Cup, Darvin Ham being the only coach that has won the NBA Cup twice, and Torian Prince being the only NBA player ever to have won the NBA Cup. So Nick, there's just a lot of firsts that are going on that conversation. It could also have been Doc Rivers' first time blowing a second half lead in the NBA Cup. So, could have been a lot of other things. But what are we going to talk about though today?
Yeah, so we're gonna have our reactions to the game, to the NBA Cup championship game, the Milwaukee Bucks Oklahoma City Thunder, our takes on that game, and then
Mhm.
obviously just takeaways in general. And then we're gonna dive into a very interesting topic that's actually starting to get talked about around the league a little bit, which is the viewership, how it's been plummeting, especially this year. So I can't wait to dive into into that topic and obviously go into obviously the Milwaukee Bucks and Oklahoma City Thunder.
No, definitely, man. I'm really excited to talk about both the NBA Cup game. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be breaking down in that. I think kind of giving our insight and perspective. That's what we've always wanted with this podcast is to give our takes on the game. I think that we hear a lot of the same stuff every day on
Mm-hmm.
local media, sports media throughout really just all channels is kind of the same thing. It's almost like an echo chamber with that stuff.
Yeah.
And then definitely with the NBA viewership, I really am curious to see what your takes are on this because I have a lot of opinions as well. I think it's something that's been more documented, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
across all the platforms. You've been seeing it either on Twitter, on ESPN. They're talking about it everywhere, and I
Yep.
think that it's kind of important to draw why we think it is. And I think there's
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of reasons for sure. But
Absolutely.
before we really dive into anything, guys, if you have not, please subscribe to the podcast. Please share with your friends, family, especially during the holiday season. Come on, guys. You want to listen to the ABNF podcast while you're opening up gifts this year. But Nick, I'm gonna let you go in first. Talk about the NBA Cup with Milwaukee OKC. What were your thoughts? Things that you noticed in that game, and just kind of give me your overall perspective.
Yeah, so obviously the Milwaukee Bucks defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder 97-81, a low scoring game, which is Graham, let's be honest, we don't really see many
No,
games where both teams don't reach 100 points. It's like a miracle now these days.
you're right.
Obviously, Giannis dominated the game. I mean, he had 26 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists. Obviously, Damian Lillard as the second option chips in with 23 points on five made threes. My one of the biggest takeaways is the field goal percentages for both teams. Obviously, especially from the 3 point line, I think that's where the game was really at. Obviously, Milwaukee Bucks shot 17 of 40 from three, a pretty good percentage, while Oklahoma was just awful from the 3 point
Oh
line,
yeah.
5 of 32 from three, not even 16% from the 3 point line. SGA was off. They contained him pretty well. He only shot 8 of 24 from the field, and overall as a team, they shot 33.7% from the field. And Grim, do you know what we really saw in this game that we talked about with Oklahoma City a lot, especially last season when they were the number one seed in the Western Conference? The lack of size in their front court. Giannis ate this team alive, man. And I get it, they don't have Chet, but still, Oklahoma still lacks size, even with Chet being available. And obviously they got Hartenstein, they overpaid for him, but that's what they really needed, obviously. But if they don't make any more moves, especially from the front court perspective, it's going to cost them a trip to the NBA Finals. I feel like.
I agree with you, Nick. I think that the biggest problem with OKC, like you said, has been the size. And even with a guy like Chet Holmgren, I think that
Mm-hmm.
Giannis will dominate that matchup 9
100%.
times out of 10 because of just the physicality and the weight. Because
Mm-hmm.
Giannis at one point was the size of Chet, where he was really skinny, not a lot of muscle on him. I know Chet's put on some weight, but he still needs to put on about 15 to 20 more pounds because I
I
don't
agree
think
with that.
he cannot body with some of these guys down low.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing too, Nick, is kind of crazy, talking about the size. Milwaukee actually was outscored by OKC in the paint by 6 in this. And
Yeah.
the other thing too is that they did shoot more free throws than Milwaukee, but one of the outliers I wanted to point out was that Giannis and Dame were the only two players on the Bucks to attempt a free throw that whole game.
Hmm.
Giannis had 11, Dame had 7. They were 12 of 18, so about 67% from the free throw line, which I know Giannis has historically struggled with being consistent with his free throws,
Hmm.
but they did everything that they needed to do. They scored 49 points combined, 16 of 31 from the field from both of them. And Giannis did not attempt a three in that game, which I think is the best thing for him is to limit himself from threes. Just like you said, Nick, the NBA has become a league of scoring. All we ever
Yep.
see is teams scoring into the 130s, 140s,
Hmm.
150s. It's becoming more common to see these high scoring games and to see a game that was a low scoring game for sure. OKC was not feeling it from three. You could tell right away. I mean, when your two top players are going 16 to 44 combined, 3 of 13 from three combined, they only attempted 6 free throws. It's kind of crazy because SGA is really good at getting to the free throw line, and
Oh
he
yeah.
only took, I want to say, 6 free throws in that game.
Hmm.
And him just going and taking nine, jacking up 9 threes, that's just not his game. Like, I know he can shoot the three, he's decent at shooting the three, but that's just
Yeah.
not his game. And I think he was settling for that a couple times over that. And I think another thing too, Nick, before I give it back to you, is that if you looked just at the stat sheet,
Hmm.
Milwaukee won in certain areas with the field goal percentage. Obviously, that's the biggest discrepancy right there. They hit 17 threes, and
Yeah.
any team that's going to hit over 15 to 20 threes a game is usually going to be the winner, no matter what. I think that the three is just the most important shot now. I think the other
Hmm.
thing too is Milwaukee, because they're a bigger team, they did win that rebound battle as well. I think that OKC actually was marginally better in a lot of areas. I think it's just that 3 point discrepancy that was so high in that game,
Hmm.
and you just seeing them not being able to hit down those shots that normally they're able to. Now, OKC is this is something I actually did find, but OKC attempts I want to so 39 they attempt 39 threes a game. They attempted
Hmm.
30 what was it?
Two.
32 in this game. And the crazy part is that they're only 16th in the league in 3 point attempts.
Hmm.
You know who's number one, Nick?
Is it in Milwaukee?
No, it's Boston. 51
Oh,
threes
Boston.
attempted a
Yeah.
game. It's
Hmm.
just like the 3 point shot is just become kind of more of a live and die type of method. And there's a reason why if you're not hitting your threes, you don't win a lot of games. We saw it in the NBA Finals last year. Boston was hitting all their threes. What was Dallas not doing? They weren't hitting their threes.
No, they only shot like 30% or even barely over that during the finals,
Yeah.
which is a
And
big reason why they got Clay.
exactly, because you need to have a knockdown, consistent shooter. Nick, but to get it back to you, let me ask you this question too. Do you feel that Giannis showed that he can still be the best player in the NBA?
Absolutely. I mean, look at his stats this year. I think I don't know if he's at about 32 points per game, like 12, 13. I mean, the guy's been sensational, man. And it'll be very interesting to see because I know Milwaukee right now, if I remember correctly, is 15 and 12. They're fifth in the Eastern Conference. And, just like you said, I know we mentioned last episode how, they were on like a crazy win streak, but they didn't really play any competition. But maybe this NBA Cup really just put a fire into this team to just have a great rest of the regular season. And let me ask you this: if the if the Bucks get to like a top three seed in the East, Giannis could potentially win MVP this season. What do you think?
I think it's possible. I mean, what he did in the cup, he
Hmm.
averaged 30, 10, and about 8 assists.
Hmm.
And that's just a regular night for Giannis. Giannis has to play amazing almost every game in order for the
Hmm.
Bucks to win. So I think it's very possible. I think if they can get a top 3 seed, I don't think they're going to catch Cleveland or Boston for the top 2
No,
seed.
absolutely not. Hmm.
If they can get to three, I think it's possible. I think that Giannis, I feel like we've done this too often now where whatever team wins the NBA championship, besides, let's just say Boston, I don't think anybody would say Jason Tatum is the best player in the league right now.
Hmm.
But it just seems to me the last 3 championships prior to that, the conversation for best player in the league was based on the person who won the finals MVP We had Giannis back in 2021. Steph was
hmm
kind of in that argument in 2022, not to the degree of like Jokic
hmm
in 2023. And then I just kind of feel like it's it just seems like we keep crowning somebody. And I feel like because unfortunately with the injuries, like we talked about last episode with Milwaukee, where they weren't able to get back to that second championship that we thought they were going to get to because of the
hmm
Middleton injury. I think that we kind of have forgot about Giannis a little bit because of the playoff woes. The blown leads to Miami last year. Uh, the previous, I know we're in the new season, but earlier in 2024, losing to the Pacers in 6 games, having Dame thinking that you're going to be more. I think that that has definitely kind of put Giannis in this awkward conversation where he's like top five, but we just don't talk about him the same way that we did about 3 years ago.
No, yeah, that's absolutely true. And also, it's the for some reason the Milwaukee Bucks, man, they just hoop in NBA Cup games. I mean,
Oh
in
yeah.
the first two seasons, they're combined 12-1 record. They went 7-0 this season, and then obviously their only in season tournament loss was to Indiana, and they made it all the way to the semifinals in this tournament last year as well. And but I would say not only like the Bucks, but like Oklahoma, to get on Oklahoma a little bit. A lot of good things about Oklahoma. They're 22-5. I think they have the best point differential in the NBA, if I remember correctly, at like 11.7. They've only trailed by more than 14 points, Grim, in two of their 27 games so far this season. That's crazy because you feel like any NBA game you turn on, at one
Mhm.
point a team is up by 20 points. Just like you said, because of all the 3-point attempts are getting jacked up. There might be a stretch where a team can knock down 4 to 5 threes in literally a 3 minute span. All of a sudden you look at the scoreboard and you're down by 25 points. So the fact that Oklahoma has only trailed by 14 points or more in two of the 27 games, that's impressive in itself. And obviously, Oklahoma's 20-1 this season when leading after 3 quarters. But here's the issue: when the game slowed down in the playoffs during crunch time, they're 0-5 when tied or trailing going into the fourth quarter.
And
So that's
yeah.
something that they have to, clean up, especially when the game does get tight in
Mhm.
playoff big moments. That would be my only concern for Oklahoma. Obviously, they need to get size as well, and Sam Presti will, I believe, he's going to definitely make moves because I don't think he's going to waste another year of this team being capable enough of winning the championship, but not making that move that needs to be made.
Well, they definitely need to kind of get onto that because unfortunately with the NBA apron and
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Williams is going to want more money because he's worth every
Yeah.
penny of it. They just signed Alex Caruso to a 4-year, $81 million extension. So
Mm-hmm.
now you got him for about $20 million a year on your payroll. And
Yep.
because OKC is a mid-market team, they're not going to necessarily have as big of a payroll as a Boston Celtics team. And something, Nick, too, I know we already talked about the size, but I think that an area that OKC definitely lacks in, and I get it, not every team has a Giannis Antetokounmpo and a big team like that. Like there's about 4 or 5 teams. I would say it's Denver, Milwaukee. I would say the Lakers just because of AD and LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could probably also put like Minnesota as well as like a bigger team, but you're not going to have a lot of teams where you're going to get mismatched like that with the size. But that is an area that I noticed, okay, seeing this game is that even though the box score doesn't show it with the points in the paint, where it's like Milwaukee dominated them by 30 points in the paint, like they could just get anything they wanted. But if you
Mm-hmm.
looked at it, any matchup that Giannis had was a mismatch. I mean, you in the
Yeah.
first half, they were switching the primary defender. There were possessions where you saw Casey Wallace guarding him, Alex
Mm-hmm.
Caruso, and Jalen Williams. And I even saw a couple possessions where Hardenstein ended up playing onto him after a switch. And
Yep.
every time Giannis had the ball on the block, what was he doing? He gets trapped into a double team, passes it out. That's why AJ Green, that's why Gary Trent Jr. had wide open threes in that game.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it with Brook Lopez 2 times where he just has a wide open three where he can take that. Damian Lillard, who is a sniper from three, if you're going to give him just a little bit of time, you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like because of Giannis's strong third quarter, this game was really close. Like I know the score doesn't indicate that, but at halftime it was 51-50. It was not a crazy game. Giannis
Mm-hmm.
scored 12 of his 26 in the third because of the multiple second chance opportunities, because again, the size is not there. Giannis was able to get the rebound because Hardenstein, as much of a great addition that was, those
Mm-hmm.
4 offensive rebounds led to 8 points. And I just felt like there was that feeling that Giannis was really locked in when he blocked Caruso. And then
Yep.
just in that fourth quarter, man, it just felt like even though the game was still not out of reach, I think it was once it got to 20, it kind of felt like, I don't know for you, but it felt like for me, when it got to 20, it was over. And I know that's crazy because just like you talked about a little bit earlier, a team could get on a stretch 4 or 5 threes they make in a row and boom, you're right back in the game. But
Hmm.
just because of how poorly they shot, and I just think again, we harp on this so much, but the size problem is that
Yep.
if they're, let's say in a playoff series, they go cold in like 1 or 2 games, how are you going to combat that? Because then you're just giving the other team the ability to really just game plan on forcing you to take anything but the three, you know? Like
No,
you're
100%.
gonna play a three, probably like a more like a 3 or 2 or box and one on SGA and force
Hmm.
somebody else to beat you. So I'm just curious, like what are they, what do you feel in a player for OKC? What do they need? Like I know the size, but like who would you want? If you were OKC, you were Sam Presti, who's the first team you're calling, and what player are you wanting?
Wow, that's a great question. I know we talked about this off air a lot, and you mentioned the name Cam Johnson. That
Mhm.
would be very, very interesting. Like a stretch four guy like that could shoot the three, could play some defense and stuff. But obviously, Philadelphia, Andre Drummond, if he's available, I know they tried to get him last year from the Bulls all for all those second round picks, but the Bulls didn't do it. If Philadelphia still struggles, they might want to get some draft capital for Andre Drummond, but
Oh yeah.
we'll see what happens. But when it comes to OKC, man, it's just like you said, when they play a team that has size and has a dominant front court player that could really dominate a game, those are the kind of teams that Oklahoma could absolutely lose to. So in the Western Conference, I think there's only two teams that could beat Oklahoma in the best of seven: the Dallas Mavericks and the Denver Nuggets. I think everybody else, because they're so guard heavy in the West, I think Oklahoma has the best on ball perimeter defenders in the league.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
when they play guard heavy teams that don't really use a post player that could
Mhm.
dominate and dictate a game, Oklahoma's going to win those games. They're going to win those matchups in the best of seven.
For
But
sure.
even though like Dallas has like doesn't have like a dominant front court player, but they still got Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively that could definitely impact the game.
Mhm. No, I think both of those guys have the ability to rim defend and then roll for lobs in a lot of fast break opportunity situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that OKC would have definitely matched up better against Boston last year. With this rendition also of OKC, I think they definitely would have matched up a lot better. Having another guy like Alex Caruso that could play
Mm-hmm.
on Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum in stretches with Cason
Yep.
Wallace as well and Lou Dort. Yeah, I think that they have enough guards. And like you said, I agree with you. I do think that those two teams specifically would be the ones that could beat them. I actually think Houston
Mm-hmm.
could give them problems too. I do think that Houston is a little bit of a bigger team. I know they're
Mm-hmm.
young and they're inexperienced, but I feel like OKC is kind of, you could kind of say the same thing. I mean, outside of SGA, who had 2 years of playoff experience prior to
Mm-hmm.
last year, I haven't really felt like that team has a lot of
I think that's why
playoff
they brought in
history.
Caruso.
And Caruso brings you championship pedigree. And
Mm-hmm.
two other players that I would be curious though, if I were Sam Presti, is Walker Kessler from Utah, because Utah is not going
Ooh,
to.
Utah would
Yeah,
ask a lot.
I know they would, but here's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. You got 20 plus draft picks. There's no way that you can't give up a couple because we know Danny Ainge will take draft capital because he has found a way to make that become assets of the future where he's drafting good young players and developing
Mm-hmm.
them. And another person too, Nick, unfortunately, my boy Halliburton has been up and down this year. Indiana's kind of looking a little weird, so I don't know what they're going to be doing, but look out for a name, Miles Turner. Now, I think that
Oh,
that would be an interesting one because he
yeah.
can shoot the three, but he can also defend the rim. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that if you needed more of a small ball where you're not using Hardenstein, but you wanted to really like be an up-tempo team, I think Miles Turner works perfectly for what they need.
No, yeah, absolutely. It would just be very interesting though, because obviously they have Chet Hockenson. They
Yeah.
paid a boatload of money, and if you bring in a guy like Miles Turner, like you paid Hockenson like $30 million a year, pretty much, and he's not going to barely be seen the floor then if you make that move.
I agree with you. I also just think Chet Holmgren is too injury prone. I
Yeah.
that's my
Hmm.
that's my fear And I feel like you need to do something to mitigate that risk because this is going to be, again, this is the second major injury he's already had. And unfortunately, we've seen it with Joel Embiid, who has not been able to stay on the floor consistently and play
Hmm.
a full 82 game season. Not like a lot of guys really play 82 games anymore. I mean, most guys are playing probably between 65 to 70 games a year at this point.
Hmm. Yeah.
It just
I
feels
got one
like,
name for
yeah.
you, Grim.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
If we're gonna throw centers out there, what would you think about Clint Capella?
I think that would be an interesting move. I don't know how his fit would be. Like
Hmm.
I feel like it's a wild card.
Yeah.
But he would definitely be a good addition. I think the experience,
Hmm.
all those years in Houston, being the like anchor with Atlanta in the Trae Young era, I think it could be a good move. I just don't know how much playing time he sees, you know?
Yeah. Hmm. No facts.
But
Facts for sure.
but he is being shopped, so I think it would be good in the sense of having another big out there that can play
Hmm.
20 to 25 minutes for you. I think it could be really good, especially we don't know how long. I know Chet's supposed to come back in the next, I think they said in Jan some point in January,
Hmm.
but let's just say he gets hurt again or something happens, or Hardenstein gets hurt again, because Hardenstein was hurt at the beginning of the year, right? They didn't even have
Yep.
Hardenstein. I mean, hey man, I think OKC could do a lot. They have the best. I think they're second best record in the league. I think behind Cleveland. I think that
Hmm.
they're fine right now, but I think that for them to get over that hump that they are so desperately wanting to get over, I think that one of those moves needs to happen.
100%.
Nick, to kind of segue into some of the things we just were talking about, 3 point era, really like jacking up a bunch of threes. Unfortunately, while we at ABNF enjoy watching basketball, we love talking about it with you guys, sharing our insights, what we think. Not everybody else is feeling that same way. The one of the most unfortunate things, Nick, is that we've been seeing about a 28% decline in NBA basketball viewership over the last couple
Hmm.
of years. Last year's NBA Finals viewership was 11.3 million average per game, and the previous year, which was a kind of a down year for the NBA Finals because of the matchup, was actually higher at 11.64 million. And just one more, Nick, before I give you the floor. Back
Yeah.
in 2018, that blowout finals with the Cavs and Warriors, there was about 17.65 million people tuning in every game. And
Mm.
it just kind of shows you over time how people are starting to watch less and less and less. Now, I think that there are some discrepancies in this data, but how do you feel? Give me some of your insights of what you found, and let's keep this conversation going about it.
No, yeah, for sure. Just like you mentioned, like the NBA games on ABC, ESPN, TNT, NBA TV combined, they're down 25%, according to Sports Media Watch. Just like you said, like I think there's a lot of reasons. Like there's way too many threes being jacked up. Just like you said, Boston is shooting over 53-point attempts per game. Like that's absolutely insane. Obviously, there's hardly any defense being played, and it also to take into consideration too, man, a lot of these players are resting more than ever before. And no, and these star
Yep.
players and a lot of these players now, man, they don't take the regular season seriously. So
No.
if these players are not going to take the regular season seriously, why should the fans?
It's hard, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the aspects that we've talked about too off air is that to really watch a lot of these games, you have to have some type of streaming service or some cable package that allows you to watch this. The NFL model
Mm-hmm.
works because most of their games are played on free channels. So if you
Yep.
have
Mm-hmm.
basic cable or free cable where you get like your standard stations of NBC, Fox, CBS, ABC, right?
Mm-hmm.
NFL games are going to always be on those channels. But with the NBA, the problem has always been is that um, over time, things have just kind of shifted to you have to have ESPN, you have to have TNT, HBO Max, because now
Mm-hmm.
Max like streams like all the TNT games, right? You have to have NBA
Yep.
League Pass to watch other games. And then with that league passes, you can't even watch the teams that are in your region. For some reason, you're
Mm-hmm.
blacked out from that area, which makes no sense. So you can watch Golden State and Sacramento play at 10 p.m. Central
Yep.
Time, but you can't watch the Bulls play at 7 o'clock because technically the region blacks you out for that. And I think another thing too, man, is that I think because of all the money people have to pay, money is tight for a lot of
Hmm.
people nowadays. The economy has not been great the last couple of years, unfortunately. A lot of people have been really trying to stretch that dollar a little bit more, and because of the uprising cost of even streaming services,
Yeah.
people are going to illegally stream these games. Website that I looked off of says that the global sports industry is losing up to $28 billion a year from fans illegally streaming games. So you have to imagine that like
Stream
that.
East, man.
Hey, yo, shout out Stream East. I don't support it. I didn't say I watched it, so I didn't do anything, okay? Um, but yeah, no, but Stream East, Sports Surge, all those sites, right? If
Hmm.
you looked at how many people are watching off those sites, if they had the statistic on that, I feel like the NBA viewership is actually not as low as people think it is. I just think that you do have a couple, I would say like maybe like 1 or 2 million people like probably watching off of that. Like I can't imagine it's like a small number. It's got to be a pretty large number.
Yeah.
So that's a huge issue. Nick, I have to ask too, do you feel like with this new sports media deal that just came with ESPN, NBC, and Amazon, do you feel like it's going to hurt the game more? Because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I feel like everybody kind of has a mixed bag with that. But what do you think about it?
That's I mean, I could see both sides of that, argument. Man, I'm just not the biggest fan of streaming, man. They just need to go back to cable. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen, right?
Yo,
And just like
yeah,
you said,
yeah,
that's why
you're
the
right.
NFL model works, right? Because the majority of the games you can watch on cable. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then what also helps is, for example, Thursday night is obviously it's Amazon Prime, right?
Hmm.
But you could just use somebody else's account to get on Amazon Prime, no problem.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So the NFL is really smart with that stuff. But no, Graham, I could definitely see both sides to that argument. But I do want to bring up real quick. Did you hear what Joe Mazzulla said in during one of his press conferences? They asked him about this, about the decline ratings
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And do you know what he said?
What do you say?
I add to that, I don't watch NBA games. I'm just as much of a problem as everyone else. And he says he read her like in his free time, like, yeah, he watches like film and stuff, but he's not watching actual games. He says he'd rather watch something else. I don't like watching the games. You're an NBA
Interesting.
coach. You just won an NBA championship and you don't like watching the games. And that's very, very interesting to me. And Grim, and you know what's crazy? I did a little bit more digging.
Hmm.
It's not just the NBA that's been losing a lot of ratings. The college men's college basketball this season is down 21%. And the NHL is actually down 28%. Like there's other sports as well. And women's college basketball is down 38%.
I
I
did
think
see
we
that
all
one
know
too.
why. I mean, Caitlin Clark is
Yeah.
not playing in college anymore. But still, like it's not only the NBA. It's majority of sports now these days is losing viewerships. And just like you said, man, that's just because of the whole streaming services. People, just like you said, money's tight, man. The economy hasn't been as strong in recent years, and just like you said, man, everyone is really trying to save up every penny as they can, and they don't want to pay extra for these services anymore, especially the cost of living, just like in general, for basic needs is has skyrocketed in these last few
Yeah.
years.
Oh yeah, 100%, dude. I mean, you look at it a couple of years ago, I don't think we were paying half of what we have to pay now for
Hmm.
probably like even just like basic groceries. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like the argument that we always hear now is like, do you choose rent or do you choose food or do you choose your power because you don't
Hmm.
have enough money to have this all like stretch around anymore?
Yeah.
And another thing too, because you were talking about Joe Mazzulla, I actually did pull a quote from JJ Redick. He was just asked about this recently, also with the
Hmm.
decline in viewership. And he goes on to say, I don't think we as storytellers have done a good job of celebrating the game. If I'm a casual fan and you tell me every time I turn on the TV that the product sucks, well, I'm going to watch the product. That's really what has happened over I think actually they actually got it wrong. Well, I'm not going to watch the product. That's really what's happened over the last 10 to 15 years. I don't know
Hmm.
why. It's not funny to me. Nothing's entertaining to me. This game should be celebrated. I've watched the league evolve. I'm in the league right now. I can tell you with fact that the league is more talented and skilled than it was 18 years ago when I was drafted. That's a fact. We don't have
Hmm.
anyone that's willing to step up and say this is an awesome game and celebrate it. That doesn't mean we don't critique it. We should critique it, but we should celebrate it. Nobody's in the media doing that. Now, Nick, when you listen to that quote, I do see where JJ is coming from. I don't see people necessarily getting as hyped as like a Stacey King, let's just say, right?
Hmm.
Like Stacey
Yeah.
King for the Bulls, great. He really brings energy and people enjoy listening to him and Adam Amin like call the games, right? But when
Yep.
you're on national TV, we don't really see a lot of people talking highly about the game of basketball. And I don't know if that's just because we focus more, I think, year round about the NFL now than the NBA. But do you think that if we did talk about it a little more positively, even with, I feel like the diminishing of like rivalries and all this other stuff, do you think that that could help the product?
It could help the product, but at the same time, like these star level players they're sitting out a bunch of games,
That is true. I just I
you
would
know.
I would argue this. I think that it would help if there was more possible coverage of certain players in the NBA.
$100%.
I think
Hmm.
one of the issues is that you got and I mean like I hate to always bring like this up, but with icons like LeBron, Steph, and KD nearing retirement, I feel like they were really advertised well when they were
Hmm.
younger, and they've continued to be advertised really highly. That was why the 2023 NBA playoffs were the highest rated playoffs in the last 5 years, because you had all three of them in there.
Yeah.
And I think that they just have to learn how to promote the next generations of stars and stop just depending on the same old guys. Because the thing is like we're in our 20s. We grew up watching these guys.
Hmm.
They're getting to the point where they're going to retire. We need to find new guys that we want to watch, right? Like we have
Yeah.
Giannis and Jokic, and you got Luca, but they just don't scream the same way that those three guys did. And I think it's just because we've continued to emphasize the older guys, right? And I think other
Hmm.
guys that just haven't panned out. Zion, injury prone. Ben Simmons was supposed to be the next LeBron, right? But we've been saying that about a bunch of people, right? His back
Yeah.
never really wanted to become that guy. Fortunately, a guy that we were just talking about earlier, Nick Lonzo Ball, another guy that was supposed to be like the next Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, didn't pan
Yeah.
out, right? And they were hyping him up. Why aren't we talking more about guys like Paulo Banchero? The Magic have only 9 televised games, and
That's a
he
joke,
before,
by the way.
like
Yeah.
before he got hurt, he was averaging 29, 8, and 5, and
Hmm.
Orlando was cooking.
Yeah.
So, and there still are. I mean, they're like,
With all their
dude,
injuries, it's nuts.
and we don't talk about them. Like there's a
Nope.
lot of really talented guys in this league, but I feel like we focus so much on the people that have always made the most money, and we don't focus on the next guy. So people are getting overlooked, you know?
No, I
So,
completely agree. They focus on certain players, certain teams, and it really doesn't help that just the media in general, they just like you said, they like to talk about the same things over and over again. They only like talk about certain teams, certain games. They don't like breaking down like the sneaky teams that have been like, been winning games as of late. Um, I don't know, man. And also too, like I know we haven't mentioned this yet, but
mhm.
the physicality is just not there anymore. It's really not the game. Like people don't want to watch 50 plus free throws being shot as well. So not only teams are jacking up threes, but like I know the NBA in recent years has tried to find ways to not get James Harden, Trey Young, all these calls and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But just like it's not fun watching a player absolutely miss a wide open layup and then like they just give him the foul just because he missed the layup, so he doesn't get embarrassed for missing like a wide open layup. Like it's just things like
Yeah.
that. I don't know, man, and especially a lot of like I feel like every week there's always one tight game that a ref completely makes a blown call or doesn't make the call that should be made. And
Mhm.
like, I don't know, man. It's just like fans are just like, I don't know, are just tired of it. And I just feel like they also see that the players don't seem to really care so much if they win or lose a game either.
I
So
don't
why should the fans like put so much energy into something if the product on the floor isn't like matching to how they are as passionate? about the team. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's definitely a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what you were saying too about the ticky-tack foul calls, right?
Hmm.
And I hate the ones where you get called after you've already attempted the layup and
Hmm.
you should have called the foul prior to that. It's
Yeah.
happened way too often. I just
Hmm.
think that it's also like besides the physicality, I think that like you just don't have rivalries anymore. You know, when the Cavs and Warriors played those first 2 years in the NBA Finals, I would even say that third year, you could tell
Yeah.
that those guys didn't like each other. You know, LeBron
100%.
hated Steph and
Hmm.
Draymond at that moment. Now they're all buddies, right? When we
Hmm.
were growing up, the Bulls versus LeBron was such a huge thing for the city of Chicago. Like we hated LeBron.
Oh yeah.
Joakim Noah hated LeBron. Like
Hmm.
we wanted to boo and beat them every single time. Like you just don't have things like that anymore. You know,
Yeah.
he was literally, do you remember when he was clapping so loud against Miami because they got that foul call? Like
Yep.
he was just trying to amp up the crowd. How many times do you
Hmm.
see that in the current NBA? Because I could tell you right now, I'm not seeing that. I don't see
Not
that a
much.
lot. No, you
Hardly, if any. You know.
everyone daps each up after the games. They swap jerseys. They hang out with each other. They're all like everything's like, oh, we're all good. We're all good, bro. Like, and there's nothing wrong with camaraderie and being a good
Hmm.
person and like and
Yeah.
being cool with each other. But here's the thing about sports. What sells that business model is drama. You sell drama. And I will
Hmm.
still say this to this day, the NFL, I know we just talked about it before with the NFL. The NFL still does a good job doing that because there's a lot of
Yeah.
drama every week in the NFL. And I don't think the NBA does a good enough job of keeping that as a focus. I think in the 2023 playoffs, we saw that. What happened? I poke bears. I don't respect nobody until they give me 40, right? That was the whole talk of the first round. And people
Yeah.
tuned in. The Warriors and Kings, you could really feel that tension between Sabonis and Draymond, the whole stepping on the chest. Like that became a whole thing, right?
Yep.
And that gets
Hmm.
people to watch these games. Here's the thing. They're not taking that and using that more because everybody is being buddy buddy, right? And I think that that's something else. But Nick, we're going to finish this conversation in just a quick second. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to finish up about the NBA viewership. Welcome back, guys. We are going to wrap up the last part of this conversation when we were just talking about with the NBA viewership. And I think that there's a lot of things that have really played a factor into that. We were just talking about rivalries, people, being too friendly with each other. And I just
Hmm.
think that we just don't see that same thing. Nick, let me give it back to you. Did you know that the highest rated NBA Finals ever was the 1998 Chicago Bulls versus Utah Jazz Finals?
I didn't know that, but I'm not
Yeah.
surprised hearing that though,
And
because that was the last dance. That was like the whole motto of like the Chicago Bulls that year.
oh
You
yeah.
know, even Jerry Cross like, hey, listen, like I don't care if you guys go undefeated, and you win the championship.
Hmm.
Still, you're gone, and I'm breaking this team up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's crazy, man. Okay, if you had to guess, how many people, how many millions of people did you think that they were averaging per game in those NBA Finals? Just take a number.
I would say somewhere in the 20s. I would say
Yes.
about maybe 26 million.
It's a little bit higher. It's
Okay.
29.8 million people were tuning in, and that was
Yeah.
1998. So,
Yeah.
just like you were talking about earlier, man, put it back to cable. Where was that being broadcasted? NBC. Why is that not something that cannot be done again, right? Like I know
Hmm.
ABC does it for the NBA Finals, but they've really tried to push it more onto with the YouTube
Yeah.
TV and stuff, and I
Hmm.
just don't feel like it works the same
Yeah.
way.
Hmm.
Um, this is one, Nick, that I didn't really write down anything about, but I really do feel like the NBA is trying to save themselves as well because people were going to be really upset that the TNT crew was about to go.
That is a very, very good point. And I also was just thinking about this as well. Now you mentioned like LeBron, Steph, KD, all those guys. Notice one thing. They're all American born players. You think that the American fans are, I don't want to say take offense, but they're taking a step back because now all the star level players, the majority of them are international kind of players. And for some reason, the NBA is trying to make Anthony Edwards the face of the NBA when he's not actually the best player in basketball. Like, for example, like LeBron, Steph, KD, like Steph was unanimous MVP. Like, you could argue he was the best player in the league at that point. LeBron's
Mhm.
been the best, was the best player in basketball for a decade pretty much. And obviously, when KD outperformed LeBron in the finals and stuff, like there was even conversations of like, hey, Kevin Durant's the best player in basketball. But now it's these international players. And for some reason, I just feel like the NBA doesn't know how to market the international talent, even though there's more international players coming into the league and being much more successful than back then. But for some reason, I don't know why. It just feels to me that they are not marketing the best players in the league, which are the international talent. They're trying to make a guy like Anthony Edwards the face of the league when he's not even considered a top 5 player in the league by most, uh, you
By
know,
yeah, by most
basketball
standards,
fans.
for sure. I think that's a good point. I think that, to think about it now, I haven't really seen a lot of commercials with like I've seen a couple with Jokic, but I haven't really seen
Mm-hmm.
that much. And
Yeah.
Jokic is top three in the NBA. I would say top two right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see him too much. Even Giannis, I know he has a decent amount of like notoriety and commercials and stuff, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like he gets the same as like, bro, you see LeBron every damn FanDuel commercial now, like Shaq's in every FanDuel commercial, like with Kevin Hart. Like you don't see that with Giannis or Jokic
No.
or Luca. Like you don't see those guys. And I think that that is a good point, Nick, because there are a lot of like American fans that maybe not necessarily watch basketball, but they know who LeBron James is because of the way he's marketed. They might not know. I know it sounds crazy to say this, but they might not
Yeah.
know who Luka Doncic is because they don't care enough because there's no notoriety in terms of commercially marketing these guys, right? But that even
Mm-hmm.
comes into the next point point of contention here. What we were just talking about earlier, the younger guys, they're not marketing them the same way. Like we know who Wembanyama is because this man is long, right? Generational talent. Like everybody knows who he is. But he's getting marketed the right way.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing that with everybody else. I think another thing too, Nick, is that I think 2020 has a lot to do with this too. I think that unfortunately with the whole and the bubble and everything, and I think the social justice movement, I think
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately did turn, and I hate to, like I don't think that that should turn people away from watching a sport.
I
But
agree. Yeah.
I think unfortunately there were a lot of people that were like, I don't want that,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted it kind of like they just were like, you know what, I'm not gonna watch this now, and that's unfortunate because you know
And
what,
then
like
they haven't got and came back since. There's a lot of them for
yeah,
sure. That's a
and
very very good point.
that's unfortunate too because like that shouldn't be the reason why you stop watching basketball. Like everybody's a human being at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
I understand that that was a very tense time in America and there was a lot of feelings that people had, but I think that that is the wrong message. And I understand the league has to support the players because 85% of the league is not white. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to support your players because these are the people that are getting affected the most. So I think that that was a huge I think that was a huge point of contention for people why they stopped watching, which again, I don't think is the right thing, but you know, what did Michael Jordan say? Republicans buy Jordans too. So it's like you have to if you don't unfortunately cater to everybody, you lose out on money, right?
No, for sure. Yeah.
Um, Nick, do you feel also like I feel like all-star formats in like any sport don't really work very well, but I do you feel like that also has kind of caused like decline? Like I feel like the dunk contest used to be this really massive thing that we always talked about, but it doesn't feel like that anymore.
No, I agree, especially with the dunk contests. You know what really hurts the dunk contest? First of all, you don't have any like all-star levelish players
Mhm.
wanting to participate. I think the last one was Jalen Brown. I think participated one year in the dunk contest. I don't
I
know
think
how
that
well.
was
I don't
like
think he
I
did
think that was like
good.
2 years ago, I
Yeah,
think
but you
one
have
or two years
guys like
ago.
Anthony Edwards, like John Morant, like Zion Williamson. They have like all these high flyers don't care, man. And I love Matt McClung. Okay, this is no
Yeah.
knock on him. This isn't a disrespect on him. I think it's a bad look for the NBA if you got a G League player winning the NBA dunk contest multiple times. A guy that's not even on an NBA roster. It's a
Mhm.
bad look.
I don't
Now it's
disagree with you.
exciting because
I don't
people go,
disagree with you.
oh, he's a short white kid that could jump out the gym. There's no doubt about that. The kid
for
can
sure.
jump out the gym. His dunk package is nuts. But like he's like when people that are like not watching the NBA on a regular basis or like not like covering basketball, not like talking about all the time like we do.
Hmm.
If you ask just a casual person who Mac McClellan is, they go, "Who?"
Oh yeah, nobody would know who that is. You have to be a
Seriously, yeah,
basketball. You have to be a basketball fan.
no,
Um,
100%.
everybody could tell you who Aaron Gordon was because that was one of the most like watched clips when he did that 360 dunk with the
He got
mascot
robbed
on.
twice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, 100%. Dude got robbed. I mean, hey, bro, shout out Zach LaVine, um,
Yeah,
but he should not have won
I
the
agree.
NBA contest, dunk
Hmm.
contest, and I don't think that Derrick Jones Jr. should have won the other year either. I think
I
that
agree
Aaron
with
Gordon
that.
should have won both of those. But again, you know who Aaron. I feel like a lot of people would even know who Aaron Gordon is because of how big that clip was.
Yeah.
You know, I also
Hmm.
think too is kind of crazy, but the NBA like All-Star Weekend has really flipped to just the 3-point contest. It's like people only tune in to see the 3-point contest, and
That's
then
so true.
I know that they did Sabrina Ionescu versus Steph Curry last year, and they're going to do it
Yeah.
again this year. I think it's cool, but is that a sustainable model? You know, do people want to see that in 15 years? Like, I
Hmm.
think it could be cool right now, but Steph Curry's going to retire, and I don't really see another guy out there right now that's like Steph Curry-esque, where like, I mean, you could say Trey Young or yeah, really that's about it. But I don't feel like it'll have that same effect, you know?
No, I couldn't agree more, man. And I think too, like the NBA All-Star game is getting worse and worse and worse
Mhm.
every single season. Why even have it at this point, to be honest with you? I think they should honestly take a break. Like there should be a break, but take a break from the All-Star crap, to be honest with you. Or take away the game. Just take away the game. Just do a bunch of skill stuff.
Mhm.
Like, well, what's the point? Like, no one, like, there's no entertainment anymore when teams are scoring 200 plus points in an All Star game, and you got a guy coming off the bench that plays like 12 minutes, will have 42 points in the game, ends up being the All Star MVP. The dude coming off the bench dropping 40 plus in 12 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
it's not good
that's true.
product.
That's true. I think that we'll see how this model works this year. I know
Yeah.
that they're doing the, four teams. One of the teams is going to be the Rising Star team. So you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
G League and younger guys on that team. That's going to be
Mm-hmm.
coached by Candace Parker. And then I
Yeah.
know you're going to have Shaq, or not, is Shaq one of the coaches? I know Chuck is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they have like two of the TNT guys as two of the coaches, and they're going to select the teams.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be cool to see for sure. Does it make it more competitive? I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
think that, like you said, Nick, you might just have to take it all away, kind of like what the NFL did. I mean, now it's like a flag football game. So
Yeah. Hey,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no. You go right ahead. There's one more thing I do want to bring up, though.
No, I was just gonna end it right there, but what were you about to say?
So I think even though I brought up earlier in this episode, like men's college basketball has actually dropped down in coverage as well. I think they
Mhm.
went down in ratings by like 20%, I believe, 21%. But when it comes to big time college basketball games like a Duke, Kansas, those casual fans know those games. They market those games better than just a regular NBA game. Like, for example, like the Cavaliers and Celtics can play each other tomorrow and nobody knows about it until that day. Like when they cover like Duke, Kansas, or something like that,
Mhm.
people know that weeks in advance. Like, oh, I can't wait to watch this game.
That's true.
I think
That
that's
is
another
true.
like big difference too. Like a lot of casual fans that would rather watch the big college game over the big professional game now. It's
Yeah,
completely flipped.
I think that marketing just in general has not
Yeah.
been good. I think another thing too, Nick, and this is a point that I did want to add as
Mm-hmm.
well. I just think that how many times do you sit there, you go on TikTok, you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, right? How many times do you see like a 20, 30-second clip of NBA highlights just pop up on your feed and how much of a rabbit hole do you go down?
I mean, I don't really. That's a good point. I mean, I personally don't really see much. Like, for example, like I'm a diehard Duke fan, so I see a lot of this stuff. But like,
Mhm.
I think just like a casual like basketball fan, like
Mhm.
look at how they're marketing Cooper Flag right now. Let's say like, dude, like they will put a 20-30 second clip of a game. You would think that he had a good game, but the other
Mm.
night, like that dunk, the couple dunks he had on Georgia Tech, like he only had 13 points. He didn't really do much. But like when you watch these clips, everybody gets so excited about this kid. There's not a guy in the NBA. They don't really do that stuff, man. They really don't do that anymore. These little clips are like you don't really see that many like highlights unless if somebody got absolutely dunked on or something. Or they might post like a player that went off, like, oh yeah, this guy went for 45 and 13 tonight. But they don't like post like videos as much, I feel like anymore. Like the college kids, they do that a lot more than the NBA players now.
So I don't disagree that they don't necessarily highlight a player as well. I think that unless you follow fan pages that really do it, you don't really see like the main accounts of NBA teams really putting a lot of stuff. It's usually actually more about their merchandise, tickets, and other stuff like that. That's what you're seeing on
Yeah.
there. What I was saying that is because I think a lot of people have become like the box score fan, where you go on YouTube, you go to House of Highlights, and they literally have a 10-minute video where you can watch all the highlights of the game. So it's like, oh, I don't even have to watch the game. I could just watch these 10-minute highlights. And I
Yeah.
basically am caught up to speed on what happened in all these games. And I didn't have to spend 2.5 hours watching the game. So I think that that is because attention spans are already so short. Let's think about it, Nick. Like, how many people are going to really watch a long podcast, right? It's hard to get people to necessarily just jump on a podcast. But if you give them a 30-second clip and they're like, wow, this is really interesting. Maybe I want to watch more. They'll do
Mm-hmm.
it, right? But I think that that's also a problem with younger kids is that they're following the NBA. I think that the NBA is still fun to watch, but they'd
Mm-hmm.
rather watch these 30, 40-second clips that they can find on like some page, right? Where a bunch of people do
Mm-hmm.
edits of like these players, right? And they're like, wow, like this is my favorite player. I love this guy, right? Or they watch these 10-minute videos on YouTube, and that's their way of how they're perceiving the NBA. They're not going down and saying, hey, I'm gonna go like turn on the TV and I'm gonna watch this for 2 hours. So I think that that's kind of where that line is being kind of blurred in, where I don't think we're going to have as many fans in the future watching a full game the same way that we did. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I mean I couldn't agree more with that take. You know, I don't know. I don't think I really need to add to what you just said. To be honest with you.
I mean, like, do you feel like, because I think it again, it goes along with your point about the like how they're advertising the college kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
In certain markets. Um, do you think that eventually a lot of ways that we follow sports will only primarily be through social media and not necessarily TV?
I think it's already going in that direction.
But do you think it'll basically just become all that? Like we won't even, we won't watch it the same way. Like it's like either you're there or you're really just following it on social media.
Pretty much social media and obviously like, dude, TikTok is really taking over, dude.
I know.
It just has. I mean, like anytime you go on TikTok, dude, like you know what's crazy? I don't know if you get this on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok a whole lot, but when I scroll on TikTok videos, I see more Michael Jordan highlights, a guy that hasn't been in the league for years, than actual current players in the NBA today.
I think it's because people want physicality again, man. I think that I was having this conversation with a friend of mine about 3 weeks ago, and I said, I understand that guys are more skilled than they were 20 years ago, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you right now, more people would rather see guys like hammering like down low, like getting really physical and dunking
Mm-hmm.
on somebody than like a
Yeah,
guy doing a step back three with that James Harden like three extra
100%,
steps.
100%.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you know how like every guy in the gym does that now, where they do that stupid like the they do a step back, but they do that like extra step over.
Yeah.
Like that. Like I'm just like I feel like
There's so many
everybody just
travels, bro, that don't get called either no more, bro. They hardly. There's
100%.
a lot of guys that carry the ball all the time. They're not calling it. Um, but yeah, dude, no, I. That's just how I guess that's what they thought that the fans would want to see more, and they're completely wrong on that aspect for the most part.
I don't disagree with you, man. I think that unfortunately, bro, we're going to be in a very odd situation with the NBA for the next 5 to 10 years.
Hmm.
Hopefully, um, there can be some happy medium there. We'll see what happens. I think that when the time comes for all of us to have kids, we'll definitely continue to show them the way that we grew up watching it for sure and getting them
Yeah.
into the game. But Nick, I think that we both kind of come to the consensus that there's a lot of variables that are there in terms of why NBA viewership is down. I think we can both agree that there's three really main points. It's the the way the game is played now,
Hmm.
social media aspect, and I think just the ability to actually watch the game without having to pay more money. And I think that until those things can get into a way where that makes the NBA more popular, I think that it's
Hmm.
going to be really hard for them to be able to turn this around the way that they would like it to.
Hmm.
So,
100%.
so yeah. Guys, we appreciate always that you guys listen to this podcast, spending some time spending it with us, really. And we want to say for 2024, it's been another great year. A lot of big things have happened this year. I know that we didn't get to record as much as we would have liked to at times this year, but there's just it's just life, and that's just how it sometimes goes. But Nick, always appreciate you, man. Thankful for our friendship as well, that we get to do this podcast, talk hoops, watch basketball whenever we can, and really just, clown Doc Rivers and all the other guys too.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, if you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Like, comments, tell us what you guys think. Let us know if you want to be on another episode of the podcast. We'd love to have more guests come on, talk hoops
Yes,
with
sir.
us. Um, and I know it's going to be the corny joke, but Nick, I will see you on ABNF in 2025.
Hell yeah. Let's get it, man. All ball, no foul.
All ball, no foul, guys. Thank you guys for listening. This has been All Ball, No Foul. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and have a Happy New Year. Enjoy it with your family and spend a lot of good time with them. Appreciate every moment, and we'll talk to you soon.